Oh, yeah.
And now, our feature presentation.
Were murdered in the Nordhausen concentration camp. We have concentration camps being set up in the United States of America. 7 out of 10 young black men, 18 to 25, are either in prison, just getting out of prison, or getting ready to go in prison. They will be used for slave labor if this New World Order is successful. And there's only one thing stopping it. That's us. I'm suggesting an alliance. I'm suggesting that we work together than fight. And I'm taking a look at America's first chief of the clandestine operations, Frank Wisner. He was an OSS officer in 1945. The CIA became the headquarters for covert warfare, and they developed all sorts of things. One of the things that they developed was anti-gravitational flying discs. Here's the Hanabu. These were operational in 1943. These have been tested, they have been developed. The public is told that they're crazy when they see something like this. But you go up to Area 51 and they say, oh, Area 51 doesn't exist. This is where they developed the U-2, the SR-71 Blackbird, the F-117. Here's a picture in Popular Science of the base, the longest runway in the world. And on this base, I believe that they have Frankenstein factories. They have developed strange-looking species. I believe that they have developed the chupacabra. And if you don't know about that, you will. I mean, it's a scary-looking little devil. And this thing here has quills. Eyes sort of like when an alien and can jump about 20 feet. It sucks the blood out of its victims. Now you say, well, you know, these are wild stories. But in Puerto Rico, they have been seen. So I'm taking a look at Operation Paperclip as something that the CIA created, something that the CIA carried out. And we take a look at the Dr. Mengeles working in these Frankenstein factories. We take a look at a number of events that have taken place, all of a negative nature. I believe that the insurrection that occurred here was not engineered by black people, but rather engineered by certain white people in the Central Intelligence Agency. And I happen to know that that is a fact, and I have it on film, with one of the agents saying that they brought in cocaine, crack cocaine, and they brought in guns into this neighborhood. They want you to riot. They want you out into the streets. They want you in jail. They want to kill you, incarcerate you, or control you by the turn of the century. There isn't anything that you have, or ever had, or ever hope to have, that they're not planning on taking away. I'm saying that they intend to kill you. They intend to incarcerate you, or they intend to control you. And that happens to be a fact. Now, years ago, they took blacks out of Africa, and they had slave bracelets like this. This is a real one. Now, they have a more sophisticated program. They intend to use biochips and transponders. I have a little chip here. One is the Hughes ATMS. That's the automatic. Well, this little transponder will replace the VIN number in your car. The Hughes ATMS, so they can tell where your car is at all times. And then there's a little teeny transponder here, and it's used for all pets leaving the pound in Los Angeles. Mandatory now. But here's the other one. The teeny mini one. This is intended to be used on you. Now if tomorrow they said all of the women on welfare are going to be inoculated.
Oh, we agree.
we're going to have a little biochip in the back of your hand. Because when you go to the store and you buy, we can't tell what you're buying. You could be selling these welfare tickets. So we have to trace you. We have to track you. We have to use something of this nature to identify you. Now you probably can't see those, but maybe we can find them underneath here. These transponders, these instruments, are used to track an individual from a satellite. There won't be anywhere you go. There won't be anything you can buy without these. And if the welfare mother said, listen, the children were not going to eat unless they inoculated the child. And they inoculated the mother. There would be lines around the block like there was lines around this block in the morning. Now this particular piece here is an identifier. The blacks and browns on the military base in Cuba, Guantanamo, now are being forced to have this around their wrists, or in this case of the children, around their ankles, so that they can be tracked and they can be identified. This slave bracelet and this marker are identical. The only thing that's changed is time. And I'm taking a look at the other things that they have. Eye in the sky to track kids. They want your children identified. They want your child tracked. Satellite imagery to track agricultural fraud. They can tell what crops are being used, what crops are being grown, where they're coming from. They do this by satellite. They intend to control every single solitary thing in this country. And then they intend to dissolve this country and create a one-world government upon the ashes of American sovereignty and the bodies of black men and women. This is not a figment of my imagination. This is... And they have the mark card. And the mark card is the multi-technology automated reader card. Maybe I've got a copy of here it is. It's huge in this photograph, but it's small. This is Robert Wallingford, the Department of Defense. And the mark card attaches to the Battle Engagement Area Simulator tracker. It goes to the beast, the mark and the beast. This is not a figment of my imagination. And when I was showing this little transponder, when I was rattling and lecturing about this in Hawaii at the YLAT room, fell out in the audience and said, "You're wrong." And I continued, and I said, "No, this is coming." He says, "You're wrong." About the third time I said, "If you know so much, why don't you come up here?" And he did. And I was wrong. He said, "It's not coming, it's here." And he had dug one out of the shoulder of a friend. They had been hiking up above the barracks up in the mountains near Schofield Barracks, where the Japanese came over to bomb Pearl Harbor. And he noticed that a little beeper on their belts. And they had a 2-hour call to get back to Pearl Harbor, if ever they were buzzed. And they were out about 8 months later, and the guy had no beeper, and he said, "Well, I guess you guys aren't on call." He says, "No, we're on call." He said, "Well, it can't be, you don't have a beeper." He said, "No, we're on call, we're on a 20-minute call." He said, "Impossible. I mean, how, you couldn't get back to the base." He said, "No, we can get, they'll pick us up." He said, "What do you mean? What are you talking about? Pick it up." They had this implanted in their shoulders. And when this one petty officer explained the whole thing, when he got back to the place, he took a penknife out and dug the transponder out of his friend's shoulder and put it in the wall socket. The government thinks that he's been there for about 2.5 years. This is not a figment of my imagination. So the mark of the beast is being used. And then I take a look at the electronic transfer plan. And this is by a fellow named Al Gore. I'm sure you know of him. Gore the whore. And by the way, the White House is being run like a whorehouse. And this man should be impeached for high treason. I call in for the impeachment of the President of the United States for high treason. And I would like to see a war crimes trial against all of those individuals who are engaged in this sort of activity. Because they are engaged in murder. I've got a little tape back there called None Dare Call It Murder. And it talks about the Clinton body count. If you took the combined killings of Jeffrey Dahmer, Jack the Ripper, Charles Miles Manson, and John Wayne Gacy and the Hillside Strangler, put them all together, they would be pale in comparison to those who have died around Bill Clinton. And Ron Brown, he said he wasn't going to, he wasn't going to go down alone. He was dirty. He was involved in payoffs. It was Vietnam. Well, he didn't go down alone. They took a lot of people with him. But he wasn't killed because he was dirty, but because he threatened to come clean. Ron Brown was murdered. Vince Foster was murdered. In our tape,
None dare call it murder.
we have a woman called Deborah Von Trapp. And she said she worked out of the White House. She worked with a computer system, and it was compromised. And she said one thing, that the head of her particular unit in the White House had called her drunk the night, I guess it was that night. He says, we did them. And she said, what are you talking about? Did them? Did what? He says, we did them. He says, did who? He says, Vince Foster. They smoked him. Now, it would be more believable. It would be more believable to see the President of the United States walk across the Delaware on water. And I could believe that before I could believe that Vince Foster could walk 760 feet on air. Oh, he didn't have any keys in his pocket when they found his body at the park. They'd searched his pocket. But when he was brought back to the morgue and 2 agents from the President of the United States office, he had 2 sets of keys. Amazing. But he would have had to have a 3rd set of the keys to drive that car. And the witnesses have been intimidated. I'm saying that there is murder. And I'm saying that those individuals who control this country are guilty of murder. And we have a one-party system. I'm saying that this government is a racist government. That they intend to kill you. And the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division of the Internal Revenue Service is working directly under the command of the President, and they will be at your door. Oh, yeah. Now, Khalid doesn't believe that individuals in the nation should be armed. I do. I do. This ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms boys, they had a little party down in the South. They called it the Good Old Boys Club. I don't know how many of you remember that. Right? And this is what they issued. These fellows are working for the President of the United States. And on our particular tape, this None Dare Call It Murder, we've got Roger Clinton, and there with the police surveillance tape. And he's leaning over and he's going, oh, he says, that's good stuff. I got to get some for my brother. He's got a nose like a vacuum cleaner. I'm saying that boy is doing drugs. I'm talking about the President of the United States who has his finger on the button that could blow up the world.